Welcome to More Than a Few Words, a marketing conversation for business owners. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. And today you own a small business, but maybe you want it to be a big business. And the challenge is, how do you scale without spending a lot of money on the infrastructure and staff along the way? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And to have that conversation, I have invited Anthony Franco to join me. And Anthony is the host of Anthony launches, scales, and sells businesses, and he's now on a mission to help other founders do the same. As the host of his own podcast, How to Founder, he and his co-host deliver twice weekly deep dives and practical advice on the challenges founders face, and I'm so glad I kind of lured him away from his co-host to join me today. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
I am so excited. And, because you've done this several times and you've worked with lots of businesses, where do you start? How do you start looking at your business and planning what you need to do to grow without kind of burying yourself along the way?
It's a great question. I would say the first question you really want to ask is, are you sure you want to scale? Right. So maybe a 5-person team, maybe a solo journey is the best journey for your business. Because scaling, introduces a lot more problems. And so, you have to ask yourself, one, do you want to scale? And two, you have to really take an objective look at your business and decide, is this a scalable business? And then you go back to your first question, I really want to scale. If you say yes, and then the second question is this a scalable business? If the answer is no, then maybe you're in the wrong business.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that. I grew my business from just me to 10 employees. And that was kind of a tipping point. And there was this moment where somebody said, you can double, you can do all of these things. And I said, I don't want to do that because the why wasn't there for me. There wasn't enough additional, and I was okay. I bought a building. My business fit in perfectly with 10 employees. It wasn't going to work bigger. And the world I had created didn't make sense. So I appreciate that there are people that have a business that works at 5 or 10 people and don't want to scale. But
there's something special about 10. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something special about a team of 10.
Beyond that, you start getting outside of span of control. You have to make the decision that you are not going to be intimately involved in everything in your business. And so let's say I am at that point. I can see my business can scale and I'm up for the challenge. I want to play. I want to play where the big boys play.
It's interesting. So usually the hardest thing is your first hire. And so if you're at 5 or 10, you kind of overcome that obstacle. Now you have to, at 10 and you want to start scaling, what really starts to matter is, with 10 folks, the reason why it's special is because you don't have to write policies down, right? You don't have to systematize certain things in your organization in order that things get done without your oversight as the founder. Mm-hmm. So when you make that decision, the very first thing that you need to do is start having your way, the company's way of doing something. This is how we respond to customers. Here's our FOQ. Here's our FAQ. Here's the knowledge base that we have in the organization. So we all are communicating on the same page. And then you'll have to have almost a communication strategy. So get on Slack, get on Teams, get on some communication mechanism where all your conversations are in one place. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to plan on scaling to 50 folks when you hire that 11th person, right? You now need to think about, all right, how does this team scale without me knowing what every single individual is doing?
I think that is hugely important advice. And I'm going to suggest that even smaller business owners need to think about that, because otherwise you can't ever go on vacation. You can't ever create a business that's going to have value and that you can someday sell or pass on to someone else if everything stays locked in your head. So I think that's really good training at any size.
That you're absolutely right. So the biggest inhibitor to scale is the founder.
Oh, yeah.
That is absolutely the truth. And the founder's unwillingness to delegate. Mm-hmm. How many times have you heard somebody say, I would delegate this, but nobody does it as good as I do.
So you have to slap them upside the head and say, dude, they don't have to do it as good as you do.
Right.
They don't even have to do it the way you do it.
Right.
I mean, I think the question is really, is it wrong? It's not your way, but is it wrong?
Well, and also think about when you first started out, did you do it right? Right? And so nobody had to give you grace, so you're going to have to give your employees some grace. That's your job, is to train them up into that and be okay. Is it good enough is the first question. And then the second question is, what are you not doing in order to give them the tools they need to be able to do this themselves?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm starting to organize my processes, my systems, and I'm starting to let go. My stomach is churning the whole time because they're not doing it my way, and I don't love that particular shade of purple, whatever it is. But I'm letting go. What comes next?
What comes next is usually an uncomfortable spot, which is, so I am naturally a builder. I like to have my hands in the weeds and doing stuff. So this is going from 10 to 50 is the hardest stage for me, because I have to start taking my hands out of things. I'm talking about the things you shouldn't do more than the things you should do.
That's okay.
Right? So I apologize for that, but this is a common founder theme that I hear on my podcast all the time, which is founders want to improve, want to continuously build, and building also means breaking. So if you're building on something, you're also breaking something else. And you have to kind of get out of that mindset and really only touch the things that need breaking. Or if you're entering a new market, that's now your job. If you're trying a new product on for size, that's your job. Instead of doing the day-to-day tasks, which you still need oversight on, use your creative energy for the expansion part, not the operations part. Also, if you're the founder, you're likely the what they call the visionary, the creative energy behind the company. You probably need a really strong integrator, somebody that can take your systems and take your thought processes and make it a system so that everybody else can follow it.
That is such good advice, and recognizing what you are, recognizing that you're big picture, that the minute you say something and you kind of verbalize it in your mind, it's done. Mm-hmm. And that you're not the person to fill in the details, and to be okay with turning to someone else and saying, make this happen.
Yes.
And make it happen more than once.
Yes.
That finding that balance is so, so very important. And okay, so I've done this. I am letting go. I'm learning to stop stirring the pot. Even though I think it would be better with a little bit more of something else, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop stirring the pot. I'm going to trust my integrator to create systems that make sense, that are replicable. Last thought: if I'm really going to do this, what do I have to avoid? What do I have to do?
So you still need to be intimately involved with hires. Mm-hmm. So when you're going from 10 to 20 or 10 to 50, culture, right? Culture is still your responsibility. So be very involved with this. These are the values of my organization, and you need to make sure that those values are upheld. And the best way you can do that is by bringing on team members that uphold the values, and also, as importantly, be quick to get rid of the CD players. Bring on A players and get people that aren't contributing out of the way as quickly as possible. A lot of us have a heart for a C player that's trying really hard, but they're not contributing. At 10, and as you're trying to scale, you don't have room for those kinds of people. So I'm giving you permission to let that C player go, so you could bring in an A player. That's another thing that with a team of 10, if you have one C player, it's okay. If you have somebody that everybody just likes, but there's something that they just can't contribute, you kind of may need to think about letting that person go.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, Anthony, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Of course. Thank you for having me again.
My pleasure. And I'm going to encourage anybody, if you guys are listening and you really want to dive into this topic of being a founder, not just being a small business owner, but being a founder of an entity that you're going to scale over time, you want to check out howtofounder.com. You want to look for the podcast, and you want to learn more. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you're looking for other resources for your business, head over to morethanafewwords.com. You'll find hundreds of conversations just like this, workbooks, webinars, and so much more. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.